Okay, in this next video I want to do a little kind of behind the scenes about what we have in the VFX Kitbags, and all I can say to that is balls. Alright, for demonstration purposes we're basically using this Pro Tactic 450 AW, which is my kind of go-to. This is actually a birthday present to me by the missus, so thank you very much to the missus. She did a lot of research on this particular bag. I did absolutely no research on this bag whatsoever, but it turns out this bag is absolutely flipping awesome. So just as general coverage, on the outside we have got all these additional pockets that's totally customizable. You can velcro on, velcro off stuff. So hat, essential for those sunny days. I'll come to that in a minute. For demonstration purposes, we've got the monopod in the side here instead of the tripod, because this camera, it's actually on the tripod right now. And inside, water bottle. Naturally you've got to have that in there, because hydrate kids, especially with all this COVID rubbish going on around. Outside pocket, headphones, earpods, whatever it is, something that's easily accessible when you're going through airports, so you can make sure you can just grab music easily when you want to, or if the director is basically shouting, you can zone out for a little bit. And something that you really don't want to travel through the airport, which is this bad boy. And this thing here is my absolute weapon of choice. This is the Leatherman Wave. Now this thing is basically a multi-tool, so opens up, clap, 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 kind of thing. It's got a little bit done in over time. I've had this since 14 years or so now, I think now. So it's obviously been used and abused. Never, ever, 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 ever keep this in here when you're actually traveling, because they will take it off you and you'll get into a lot of trouble. Like everything, label everything as much as you can. So this guy is essential for on-set work. If you want to fix your tripod, fix your ball mounts, whatever you want to do, this thing is absolutely flipping essential. Right, that goes back in there. Push, push, push. In the front pocket we've also got things like, for example, little essentials like sun cream, any kind of medicines, etc. you need to have, like for example like headache tablets, antibiotics, etc. that you need to take. So things that are instantly accessible and easy to grab hold of should you need them in a pinch. Now this is handy. Before I go inside itself, this is actually quite handy, because this actually kind of velcros off, so you can take this thing out if you so want to. Come on. So if you just want to run around on set with just a little pockety thing, you can do a little belt doodah if you want to look like a member of camera department, which according to one of my first visual effects supervisors says you don't look like camera department because you're a supervisor, therefore you have a bag, not a belt. So use it, don't use it, your call. Alright, inside. Okay, camera weapon of choice. Now I've had this bad boy since 2013, give or take, hence this lens cap lens hood's a little bit knackered now. But this is my D800E. I've had this thing for God knows how many years now. I chose the E so that there was no filter for softening on the sensor. This is the Nikon lens. I don't know which one it is. Blah blah blah. It goes from 28 to 300, so it's pretty nice for tight shots. It's pretty nice for getting textures, because with textures you have to go very far back and shoot long, so you're flattening everything out. So you don't want to make sure that you don't get any kind of perspective distortion or anything like that going in there. So this is very, very useful for this thing. It performs well in low light. Worst case scenario, I do have another couple of lenses. One's basically a fisheye, one's a 20mm, and one's a nifty 50 as well, off the shelf. Again, relatively straightforward stuff. These are all just for data acquisition, just like everything else. Now, when it comes to set work, you do tend to have a lot of analog stuff on set, while back at the studio you end up with a lot of high-end kind of systems. So you are starting to get more higher tech stuff on set now than what we used to do previously. So you're talking things like, you know, range finders now, as opposed to so these things turned itself on for some bloody reason. You're getting range finders now instead of tape measures, and you are getting, well, still got your trusty tape measures in here as well. Always have more than one, because if you lose one, then you're screwed. These things can be banned. People can ban these sets. First ADs, etc., or camera department will ban these, especially with some of the later ARRI cameras, because they do, if they accidentally get picked up in the sensor, it can ruin the sensor. So some sets, they won't even allow you to even have it in your bag. So you have to go back to old school. All right. Next thing, masks. Naturally, in this day and age, you want to make sure that you're masked up nicely. This is actually one with 2 valves here, so you're breathing out all the bad stuff. We do actually have a separate one, which is somewhere. Where did I put it? Is it in here? Ah, there's another one here, and there's a third one, which is my kind of main one, which I am actually using right now, which is this guy, just a regular kind of cloth one. So it's basically got full face covering and all that kind of stuff. But these ones I've had since before COVID, and totally washable, but because obviously they're not really very COVID compliant, with obviously with the ventilators going on here, the respirator thing going on here, and on these ones. These are great for protecting yourself against dust, smoke and any nasties, but not very good for everybody else, because obviously you're still breathing this stuff out. So this, double up with this, works very, very well. All right, so Respro, great brand. I've sworn by these guys for the last 10 years. So these are pretty good. Next pocket, power. You've always got to basically have more power on set than you need. Fully charged as always, both charged up. Both got Velcro on it. Neither of them stick together, and that's intentional so that I can actually swap them out as I need to. And it works obviously because you can then just stick it on your phone, or you can stick it on the back of your iPad when you're running out of juice. And if you're using something like one of these guys, one of these fellas, they do tend to suck power very quickly. So a little bit of push, 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 boink, and we're on, and we're good for another few hours or so, especially if you're using apps like using stuff like this, which is for remote monitoring, so you can see exactly everything that the director's seeing. You're not interacting with these guys, you've got your own little video village with your own iPad. It's a lot more helpful, but it does suck a lot of power. So if you don't have a plug, if you don't have a mains tap, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, then these things are absolutely essential. So the biggest, most powerful ones you can get. Good thing is, by Velcroing it, boop, you can stick it on the inside of your bag as well. So if you can, Velcro everything. And when I say everything, I mean literally everything. Even this guy, which again was the wife's really good at actually gifting me camera gear and power stuff, to be frank. Next one, so we're going through this. Hard drive, spare hard drive. USB, you never have enough USB taps. And for data transfer, you've got micro SD, SD, AC, you've got USB 3, blah, 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 blah. All the stuff you need to basically transfer any data from any. Theta for 360s. This is it's not the latest one, it's the one prior to it. Does the job, doesn't shoot RAW yet, but it's good in a pinch for us. If you just want to get in there and do a quick dirty 360, it's quite cool for that. Two more things here. One is basically external storage in case you run out of space on your main device, and also literally have a redundancy backup as well, just to make sure that everything is basically double or triply backed up just to make sure. Business cards, because you never know who you're going to meet on spot. There's also a double in here as well. Coming to the next one, these guys are essentials. Pens. Oh, even in this digital age, you still need a lot of these. And the reason for this is because if you need to add marks to things in certain colors, you need to add marks to things in certain colors. You never know when the heck you're going to need it, so fill up as much as possible and have semi-permanent ones and permanent ones as well. Tape. Now, I would normally use camera tape. Finding camera tape here in India is like trying to find gold dust. So you end up with a lot of this masking tape stuff and you end up coloring it. So you're literally just going around, and with the fat end of this thing, you're simply just going around and you're basically there you go, blue tape. Simple. So a lot of that tends to happen, tends to go on. A lot of Heath Robinson kind of, you know, stuck it in the sea, doesn't go through there, tear it off, bosh, we've got a blue mark, we can just cut it as we need to. So next one, let's go here. Cables. As many different types of cables for USB or for adapters for any kind of scenario, like USB to Cat 5. If, for example, the hotel room you are in is not having Wi-Fi, you can patch in USB 3. This is very, very important. This is basically your own walkie earpiece, and most walkies tend to have this sort of attachment. Long lightning cable and then short lightning cables, and that brings me nicely onto this bad boy, which we can basically just plug in as we need to. Again, velcroed in as we need, so we can take it in, take it out as we need to at the end of the night. Plug in as we need, charge everything up, and we have got everything hooked up for the next day, everything charged up for the next day. We don't even need to take it out of the bag, we can just wire things in as we need to. So trying to keep everything nice and self-contained without having to take everything out of the bag, and just keep everything inside as we need to. The only thing that we don't have is mains tap, which I did contemplate sticking in down here, but because I've actually got this massive clinometer here, which is an electronic one, so this will give you all the angles that you need. You stick it on camera and it will give you the exact angle of what your camera is sitting at. Alternatively, you can use your phone's clinometer as well, or you can even use your iPad's one if you're utilizing that, but it can get a little bit distracting, and it can also get a little bit risky as well, because this thing you can drop, whereas your iPad is going to be a little bit more expensive if you do drop this, if you do drop it. So this thing itself obviously is very, oh, shut up. There we go. So this thing can get bashed around, whereas if you drop your iPad or somebody accidentally knocks into you, which has happened several times, you know, you do tend to drop electronic devices on set, you don't need to worry too much about this thing breaking because it's pretty hardy, whereas your iPad is not going to be as rigid. So yeah, and that's that. Finally, cable ties. These things are a godsend. Two reasons. Number one is that you can just cut these guys up and you can use them as, if your green screen permits, you've got your own little tracking markers, which are Velcro, which you can then just stick onto stuff. So you don't need to worry about putting sticky tape on everything. You can just cut these guys up and just put them onto your screen as you need to. Even just throw it and then boom, it will stick. Now, this only works with certain types of screens. If it's basically got a small loop, if it's soft, it will stick, especially with these very, very kind of tight, fine Velcro that's here. For anything else, you're going to be hard pressed. Case in point, something like this. It grabs it a little bit, but it doesn't grab it very, very easily. So check with the screen before you go and drop a load of money on. I mean, they're not exactly expensive. You'll need them for wrapping everything up anyway and tying everything together. It's always great to have. But if you're using them specifically for markers, check with the screens first to make sure that obviously they do stick. Otherwise, you've just wasted your money on buying a bunch of these things. So, right, so that's pretty much the bag. To a degree. Next thing, the lid. Now, I purposely keep these pretty much empty, and there's a very, very simple reason for it. Number one, getting into zips and getting into things is kind of a pain in the backside. Second thing, it bulges. It bulges out, and when it bulges out, it can interact with this, it can add pressure onto this, but more to the point, it can create pressure on the expensive stuff which is in here. Case in point, your iPad or your computer or whatever. So I try and avoid putting anything in here, only small items that I need to gain sporadic access to, like padlocks for security. This is again another stupid purchase that I made many years ago, which is just a pen that lasts for 80 years, so this thing will never run out. Space pen. Again, stupid purchase, spent too much money on it. I should have just bought a big biro. And finally, inside, your iPad for logging on set. Now, this is not my main logging one. We actually have this guy for logging. So again, label everything. So you can see we're actually using the back of the iPad as a cutting board to cut all the little markers out as we needed it on the other day. I'm just going to unlock this guy, which I'm not going to show you the password for. And then your temporary test application. So this is the application that we tend to use. This is one which we built ourselves. And it just gives us kind of like a traffic light system to be able to fill out information as we need to. So if I do unit 1, shoot day 2, Wranglers, I don't know, Dave, wherever Dave is. Set the slate number, slate 6. It gives us the opportunity to save the thing now. And then we've got things like we can set the master, we can set its interior, so it's an interior set. Script location is I don't know, airport, whatever. And it's in, the script time is in night. VFX shot, it's VFX shot number 2. So, and then we just set our lat long. This is not hooked up to the internet, so this is not coming in right now. And then obviously I can then set up a manual manual address and set a thumbnail image for this guy. So then just going through all of the log sheet information, design the workflow, design the set media, what's come in, logging the camera information down and logging every single take. So we do this for every single shot, and then you end up with like a large PDF or CSV file of all the information that we basically need for the entire shoot. So it gives us a list of all of the shots, all of the scenes, all the slates, all the takes, how many average takes per slate, and so on and so on. So this is basically the device that we primarily use, and the app that we primarily use to log everything down. So this one is primarily for viewing everything on set, naturally. This bad boy is essential. Now this is our backup. We actually have the main one that we have, just zoom back here. The main one that we actually have is actually enclosed. We mounted it inside an iPad case like this, because the 12-inch iPad one does fit very nicely. So you can protect these things, because these things are not cheap in any way. And these are used for basically for color neutralization. So you've got all your primary colors on there, you've got your skin tone references, you've got your white to black references for your gamma curve, so on and so on and so on. You've got all your colors here for your parade and for your vector scope, so everything can be neutralized, equalized up, so that all matches. But you want to make sure that this thing is kept as perfect as possible, so you want to keep it inside you know, you can mount it inside a case. So another one that, like I say, we have is basically velcroed into a iPad 12 case. The other things that we tend to carry is this bad boy. This is what we call a LiDAR, and what that stands for is light imaging, distancing and ranging. So what this will do is it will chuck out a laser from this spinning mirror. So you can see the laser there. Just zoom in. Boop. You can see the laser here, which is this side, and this thing will spin around and it will shoot the laser out in all directions around and hit a surface, bounce back, and the amount of time it takes to actually travel from here to the surface and back will determine its distance. So with that in mind, it spins around and around and around and around and around and around and around, shoots out thousands and thousands and millions of points, generates what's called a point cloud. That point cloud can then be surfaced, geometry, positions extrapolated from it, distances extrapolated from it, and so on. The more scans you do, or the more detail you actually put into this thing, the longer it will take, but the more fidelity you'll actually get. So we've kind of got it down to a fine art of like how many, you know, what type of scan level we need to do based on its requirements at the end. So you don't necessarily need to go for a massive, huge, you know, huge detailed scan just for tracking, or just to know where the edges of your set are if you're just using it for edging for set extension work, for example. So knowing how to work this thing is something that we've worked out over the last, well, we've been working with LiDAR since around about 2013, so you know, a good 8 years or so now. So in here we have memory cards for dumping data from here. 2 copies of each, are naturally, just to make sure you make sure you have a redundancy. Battery pack, power for the battery pack, USB transfer thingy doodah to transfer the memory card data. Big battery pack. Again, there's another one in here already. You obviously make sure you don't check in, you carry it on the plane because it's obviously a lithium-ion battery. This thing you can check in obviously with the flight case. Gitso head for mounting the bottom plate here, which slides in nicely. Now we normally use the Gitso tripod, which is very sturdy, weighty tripod base. It doesn't have a neck to extend upwards. It's basically just the 3 legs, and this sits at the top. On this particular shoot we didn't bring it, we just used the standard Manfrotto one, which is this guy. As you can see, it wobbles a bit, so you end up having to sandbag this down to make sure that everything is kind of very nice and stable. Inside the top, just power cables, documentation, and that's it. So how do you align all these scans up? And it's relatively straightforward. You end up using more balls. And when I say more balls, I mean more balls. Boink. So these are what we call reference spheres. So you either mount them onto something magnetic, because they're magnetic, and they will stick onto something. Alternatively, you put them onto little stands, like so. Extend the legs out, so they've got little tripods, and you just stick them around the scene, like that. That's it. So I want to go into things like, you know, what you're going to wear yourself. So you've got to try and cater for obviously every single scenario that you're going to be filming in, and it can be anything from like Arctic conditions through to like middle of the desert, or you're stuck inside that hot and sweaty dusty studio. So hope for the best, plan for the worst. You may be in various different scenarios in a single shoot, you may just be in one fixed one. So, you know, look at the call sheet, plan ahead. These guys, Tilly hats, you kind of look a little bit like a sailor while wearing it, like you've got some very, like you're at 50 or something like that. I'm close to 50. Anyway, you do kind of look a little bit ancient wearing it, but They are kind of cool because they do keep you out the sun. And believe me when I tell you, being this fragile English rose that I am, according to my mother, you do need to make sure that you're staying out the sun, you're not getting burnt. It's the reason why the sun cream comes in very, very handy as well. So that, plus sunglasses, are totally essential for any kind of outdoor set use. Push comes to shove, have a small hat on standby, just in case you forget your main one. You really want to have something nearby so you can at least cover up your head and be as comfortable as physically possible, because otherwise you will be miserable and burning, and it's not pleasant in any way, shape or form. Next thing. Next thing. Now, this may look counterproductive, because at the end of the day you do have access to other things, like for example like socks that you can kind of put around your neck to kind of cover your neck up. But these things, just a scarf, big thing, it's actually great because number one, head, you can kind of cover yourself up if you forget your hat, because that also kind of looks like you're just coming out of the flipping desert, which actually makes you look cool. The other reason is that you can just wrap the thing round, go around that way, go around this way, grab the top, take that underneath, push around there, and then you are good to go. And now you're covered at the back, you're covered at the front, you can bring this up, and now you love the business. Which really doesn't work, especially when I'm actually talking to you and it's looking like it's going to rain like heck right now. So, but this does work. This does work in the rain as well. So these are actually really good. Speaking of rain, a very good waterproof. Do not skimp on waterproofs, because again, the last thing you want to be is stuck out in the middle of nowhere and it raining horribly. So you're going to get totally soaking wet. So a good Mac by North Face or one of the other camping gears, mountain gears, that kind of stuff. Very good footwear. Now I kind of swear by these guys. Solomon, I absolutely adore these things. I've had these, well not these particular ones, but I've used Solomon for absolutely years and years. I don't buy anything else when it comes to set footwear for trainers and anything like that. What I would recommend though is another brand called Keen, K-E-N, and they are so long lasting. The last pair I had lasted me like 9 years, 10 years or something like that, I think it was. And I went through God knows how many kit bags in the interim. I've gone through so much other gear in the meantime, but those things last me. Occasionally you have to glue them back together every now and then, but those were absolutely brilliant. You could go up mountains in them. I went in the snow, went in the rain, went in the sleet, went in the everything. And these things just lasted me, just kept fighting back. Dry them out overnight, brilliant. Waterproof as well, really good. I think that's about it. So every single, you don't lug all this stuff on every single shoot. There's no point. You don't go around like taking flipping LiDARs with you on every single shoot, unless you've got something like a compact BLK 360 or something like that. You don't necessarily, you need to take things like this with you purely because you need to know where your lights are. You can see here, there's a big thingy thing, and you can see the highlight there. So you need to know where your lights are, you need to know what your colors are, you need to know what your camera information is, you need to be able to plan for every single eventuality. Taking things like, for example, bindis. Bindis are basically, for those of you who are not in India, are little kind of dots that wives and women kind of stick to their heads, and these are brilliant for tracking markers. There's also little paint versions that you can actually get as well that people make marks with, and it's basically just like, makeup paint. They're brilliant. You can basically just add marks to individuals, you can add it to objects, so it's non-destructive. So very low-tech materials for a high-end requirement. So you're trying to make sure that you've covered mostly to do with things like asset acquisition, tracking, compositing, texture work, lighting reference. So you're trying to cover as much as that information as physically possible by acquiring all the data that you can, not only about, say, light information, but also to do with things like logging all the info that you can about the camera, what the camera's doing, where it's going, what it's done in every single take. I think in future what I'll do is I might do a little example, a little workshop on specific case study about how to log something. This may be ideal scenario, but a lot of the shots you will actually end up doing will never be ideal scenario. There will always be something will go wrong. You can hope for the best, but you have to plan for the worst in every single one of these eventualities, every single one of these scenarios, because it won't be perfect. Your green screen will never be perfect like you see in a lot of these online references, because they haven't got time to light it like that. They haven't got time to stretch it. They haven't got time to even source the right paint for your screen. So don't expect anything to be like what you have in the examples from tutorials and stuff like that. So it might be a case that I might do one which is like, okay, here's a real world scenario of where everything's suddenly gone wrong. Just like this lighting has suddenly gone like this because we've got, look at that. Look how that suddenly changed. Isn't that cool? I really want to go outside right now, I have no idea. Even though it's kicking it down with rain, I really want to go outside because I've been cooped up in here for 5 days, man. Alright, that's it. Toodaloo, have a good one. Take care, bye bye.